Hi, folks. Ryan Honeyman here from Lift Economy. Many folks have come to us over the last 10 years and asked, how do I get more involved in creating an economy that works for the benefit of all life? They also ask, what skills and experiences do I need to help make this transition? So 3 years ago, we created something called the Next Economy MBA to help address this and similar questions. Lift Economy's Next Economy MBA is an online course that's designed for entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, students, recent graduates, employees, and folks who want to learn more about transformational next economy strategies and businesses. Join the growing alumni network of nearly 250 alumni who've gone through this program and learned essential skills and hopefully built lifelong relationships for catalyzing businesses in the emergent and regenerative economy. So we encourage you to check out our course. You can go to lifteconomy.com/MBA. The next course, Cohort 7, starts on September 21st, 2021. So once again, go to www.lifteconomy.com/MBA. And now, on with the show. Welcome to Next Economy Now. The goal of this podcast series is to highlight the leaders who are taking a regenerative, bioregional, equitable, democratic, racially just, and whole systems approach to creating the new economy. George, welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
So, George, first question is, where are you from originally?
Well, originally I was raised in Florida in a business family, but I was early 70s, back to the lander, ended up going into farming and moving to Wisconsin, and ended up becoming the business leader of Organic Valley Crop Cooperative.
And when you were in your late teens, early 20s, did you think that this was what you'd be doing when you thought, like, what am I going to be doing for my career?
No, I want to do anything but be inside. So I did not want to be a business person. I went to college to study forestry because I'd always been a naturalist. But I soon moved over to animal science and got an animal science degree, and that was in part because I spent some summers on farm and kind of had as a backup plan. But also, again, at that time, 1972 was the Back to the Land movement, and I certainly joined right in with both feet.
Yeah, and so tell us about the origins of Organic Valley.
Well, the family farm movement has, from the 50s through the 2000s, went through, basically the loss of a huge amount of the family farms. And 1980 was kind of the start of a very dark era where interest rate went as high as 13%. Commodities, there was a lot of foreclosures, a lot of suicides, a lot of farm activism. The 1985 Farm Bill was a pivotal point where the activists really felt they might get some respect out of Congress. There was no help there whatsoever. And the local group in Wisconsin that was very active just took it on themselves that they thought value-added co-ops then were the only hope we had. And we were born out of that. And they recognized, and then we as farmers that participated recognized organics offered us a new paradigm to try to bring sustainability, economic sustainability into farming. And so we started a farmers co-op, marketing co-op around the word organic as a solution to the farm crisis.
Yeah, and for folks who don't know what a producer co-op is, can you say a little bit about that and why you decided to start that instead of just, say, a traditional business?
Yeah. Well, a co-op is a traditional business with some different tax bases, but the big difference is the primary stakeholder that benefits from the business is the owner. So in our case, the farmers are the owners of our business. We really don't like to even use the word owner. We like to use the word member of our cooperative. And our primary measure is to provide a better and more sustainable economic return to farmers. But that doesn't mean that all aspects aren't important of the business. But our primary drive is are we providing the economic sustainability for the family farms? But a co-op is a very exciting thing because a co-op is about serving the present members. It's never about how much is the company worth, what the exit strategy is, what's my return on valuation. All that is not part of the conversation. Now we have our own conversation, but we don't have any of the my stock price is down or how do I pay off previous owners. If a farmer comes into a co-op and sells milk to us or eggs for 20 years and then they leave with having been served well versus, gee, the company is now worth $1 billion and, my share is 85 million or, any of that kind of things. We don't have any of that overhang. We're just dealing with our mission and being true to our mission, and our mission is to serve family farms. Pretty radical thought.
Really. It is. You've built $1 billion organic-only company based on that idea. It's pretty phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. And more importantly, we've made a difference in thousands of family farms to go from surviving to even prospering, and generation changeover, and that's the real reward here. But it's a bigger reward. We have employees that have meaningful employment, which is a very important thing. We have consumers who are enjoying much better food, and we have the earth and the land being taken care of. So it's truly we talk about the farmers a lot, but our mission is to serve a bigger community, or organic whole, you would say.
I'm curious, in the earlier days, why not stay smaller, say like 10 farm families? Like why, what was the conversation around growth, and how did you sort of balance that idea of why it stays small or grow bigger?
Well, since we were very idealistic in our beginnings, we clearly knew what we wanted to do, and it was to save family farms. So we just took early on the attitude that we would keep growing as long as we were true to our mission, never having a clue what that meant. But we never were self-centered. We were always about a lifeline for family farms. And so we, to this moment, feel like we're true to our mission. I never imagined that we'd be, a national co-op with 2,200 members. I don't even know what we are now, 14% of all the organic farmers in the United States. With all 1.1 billion sales, none of that was imaginable. What was imaginable was, as long as we're true to our mission, we should keep serving family farms. Certainly, early on, I would get people say, "Don't you think we're getting too big?" I say, "Yeah, we're concerned about that." But then I said, "How's your neighbor doing that you're trying to get to go organic?" "Oh, I finally got him going. You got to take him on. The poor guy's going to go broke." And then I would say, "Well, then you're asking me to double the size of the co-op, right?" And that kind of ended it, because the truth is we did want to help all those people that needed help, and we're very proud of that. But it's meant that we've had to learn how to run a big business and yet still be true to our mission.
Yeah, I'm curious about the distinction between Organic Valley, the sort of administration, as opposed to the individual farmers. How big is the sort of administrative or company staff versus the farmers?
Well, right now we've got around 900 employees and 2,200 farmers plus. It's pretty hard to draw any correlation because we do very little of our own processing. So if we had 10 processing plants, we could be maybe, who knows, up to 2,200 employees. So it depends a lot on what function you do. But one of the keys to our success is we took an early on focus on the word organic, and we elected to hire as much that we, or outsource as much as we could. So we hired processing plants to process our milk or our eggs. We hired somebody else to haul the milk or eggs, because those aren't organic functions. Now, of course, we had to take on all the management of quality and inventory and all that, but we really focus on how do we get organic farmers into the system and how do we sell into the organic marketplace. Those are the primary skill sets we had. The other skill sets were necessary, but whenever we could hire them, we did. So we're a virtual company, and that's different than a company that has a lot of their own manufacturing.
Yeah, because I'm curious, some of the locally resilient economy movements have been all about vertical integration. And so it sounds like one of the success factors, if I'm hearing you right, was actually not doing that too early. Is that, or even not doing it now? Is that correct?
Well, we did the vertical integration. We just didn't do all the work. And your local neighborhoods all have some good idea where people had a vertical integrated plan, but they just built a brick and mortar that ended up taking them down because they just didn't fill it as fast as they wanted to. So we've always had the attitude to not let brick and mortar take us down, and to hire out work, and when it becomes obvious that we could do it ourselves, to consider it. So today, we've got a processing plant in the North Portland area that we're opening up in the next few months. We've got another facility we're opening up here in Wisconsin to do cheese and make ghee, but we're still going to only have a handful of processing plants when we work with over 100 processing plants in the country. So we're still a virtual company, but certainly as we get bigger, we need to invest more for efficiencies and or uniqueness that we can't get somewhere else. One of the advantages we had as a co-op is that we were able to start a co-op, not being a big fan of co-ops. And so we saw co-ops who had so many plants or brick and mortar that serving those plants or brick and mortar became their objective because that's the way plants are. They need to be fed. And so often the farmers were sacrificed because the brick and mortar had its own demands. We saw that when we started our co-op. We saw co-ops that just were trapped by a lot of different mediocre management, so to speak, or over management by farmers. We were lucky to start a co-op having seen a lot of the shortcomings of co-op and therefore try to see how we could do better. So it's kind of been 1988 is kind of Johnny come lately in the co-op, farmer co-op movement. But for us, it was an advantage because we could learn from what we experienced through other co-ops.
Yeah. Do you have advice for what are like 2 to 3 things that you think you guys did differently that led to being more successful than some of the other co-ops?
Well, one thing we've done, just following the conversation we just had, was I always say you build the business, then the building. So many people get a business plan, they get excited, and they go make a major capital improvement, and then the business doesn't build as fast as you think. And then, there's this point. So I'm always been rely on your partners before you take that capital risk. That's pretty important. The other thing is co-ops did was in order to avoid profits, they would allocate their profits to their farmers. So I made $1 million this year, and I distributed out to 80% of it to all the members. And so now I have $800,000 in somebody's name, divided all up in somebody's names. And I avoided paying 35% taxes, hoping that they would pay 20 or something like that, and just as a tax reason. But the problem is now you have an obligation to $800,000 that carries with you. And sooner or later, this allocated equity obligation became a burden where co-ops owed farmers a lot of money. And all of a sudden, guess what? They happened to run into hard times business-wise, and they weren't able to return that equity. And then the farmer pressure starts building. And, what about our equity? And so you had a lot of equity promises in the 80s and 90s that really changed the direction of the co-ops. And so we've always been tried very hard to make our annual performance be the measure of how we succeed and avoid future promises that could come back and overpower us and or turn into a political storm, which you always, in any kind of democratic business, you want to look out for the dangers of political storms.
I'm also, this idea of raising capital is constantly on the mind of many entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs. What was your approach, and what have you found to be a good balance with, raising capital versus growing on revenues?
Well, first off, when we started the co-op, we tried to raise capital within our group, and we raised enough to, get by. But the real way we raised capital was by, number one, not spending capital. So we used other people's plans, as I said already. So we avoided some of that risk cost. The thing that was really unique about us in our dairy program, because, we have eggs and produce and meat products, but our dairy program was blessed that in the very beginning, we got a conventional co-op to fund us, to sponsor us. And they actually provided funding for us for 4 years. And so that critical period when you went from a dream to looking hopeful, we had a funder. Usually that's the period of time where, who wants to fund a dream, type thing. And because we had that primary funder in the beginning, it enabled us to get to where we could get independent. So one of our keys to success is we built an organic business based on cooperating with a conventional business. So conventional ag. So that's the conventional ag were the ones who made our products. The conventional ag are the ones who sponsored our project. And while no one liked the word organics because it's got a little bit of air to it and that kind of thing, but what they all did like was, boy, it's just terrible. It's happening to family farms, and this organic thing looks like it might be a solution. So even if people were anti-organic, they were glad to see a market come that might help the family farms. And so cooperating with conventional ag has been a real trick when, of course, we have some strong feelings about some of their methods, but yet our next organic farmer is going to be a conventional farmer who switches, and we have to be careful not to alienate that person. So we've kind of danced that fine line of cooperating with conventional ag and leveraging there to help us build our business. Partnering, they call it, I think.
That's really phenomenal because I think you've already shown a few major differences, I think, than many in the social impact space. Like, it's usually avoid at all costs the conventional folks and try to build your own system. And maybe that's why several other competitors failed along the years.
Well, we've seen quite a few failures, but some were just fortunate. We started in the Midwest. The Midwest farmers are a little different because often they grow their own feed and they have less vulnerabilities to some of the things. And all along, our farmers were just hopeful for some hope. So it wasn't like we returned huge returns in the first few years, but we showed hope. And if we needed to cut price to generate money, we did. Once we got past getting to self-funding, like we talked about just now, is one of the things that we did that's unique, that's worth mentioning, is that, and it worked because we were already established, we already had a name for ourselves, but we started selling preferred stock to local individuals. And so we started out, well, the big sale was we had a 6% dividend preferred stock, and we sold this to neighbors here, $5,000 here and $5,000 there. But to our surprise, there was a tremendous amount of support from all kinds of places. And so we were able to raise equity money at a 6% dividend. And that really helped buoy us with the banks, because now you had somebody that was behind the banks. And we still, to this day, right now we're not selling any, but we're about ready to go out and sell another preferred stock. We're lowering the dividend down to 4. But we've been blessed by a lot of support. You'd be surprised about some widow here sells a farm for $400,000 and really has never made an investment in their life. They come in here and give us $100,000. You're kind of like, wow, that's surprising, But yet for them, it was solid 6%. And now 10, 15 years later, they're all thrilled that they have a 6% dividend in a solid outfit like us. So preferred stock was a vehicle. The difference is we started selling preferred stock to individuals versus institutions. And it takes a lot of work. But honestly, you have another stakeholder group that supports you, that brags about you, and represents us in the marketplace. So the preferred stock people have been really a blessing to the co-op overall.
Yeah, 6% is a great return. I think you get a lot of takers. You probably got a lot of takers in that first offer.
Yeah, you would, but it's also equity money. We have redemption privileges. We wrote it, but still, it's been a great thing for them. It's been a great thing for us. And again, there was a time when 6% was the going rate, and it wasn't a deal. So to me, their equity position and them standing by us, but we did shut that down now, and now we're considering opening up a new one at 4%. So community funding, you would call it, or in the new world, or crowdfunding or something like that. For us, it was just trying to see if their neighbors would help us.
In the upcoming rounds, can people who are customers, say, based in California, participate, even if they're not in Wisconsin?
Yeah, there's state laws, and I think California is not a problem, but there are states in the union that we have different legal requirements we have to satisfy, and we're very careful to be aware of all those and make sure we do it the right way.
Let's shift a little bit to competitors. And, when I go to the grocery store, I know about Organic Valley, but it seems like every cheese and dairy company has a picture of happy cows eating peacefully in green pastures. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, how do you communicate that you're different to the end consumer?
Well, it's a very difficult subject. We're very different in a lot of ways. And, we've been a pioneer. We're very movement-oriented. We're a co-op. But those pretty pictures on the label, and quite honestly, one of the biggest frustrations we have is consumers really don't recognize what a co-op means and what a radical solution is to some of the ills of Wall Street or some of the anti-institutionalism you felt in the recent election and that kind of thing. A co-op is a very unique and positive organization, but the average consumer just doesn't get it for whatever reason. You'd be amazed. I'm amazed constantly how people really think highly of Organic Valley, and then they'll say, I didn't realize it was a co-op. And, we've done all the bragging we can do. But still, being a pioneer has been helpful, but we're the real deal as far as movement orientation. We've been here before the OFA got passed. We've been at the leadership front the whole time. And so we've taken on what I like to call influential marketing, which is rather than trying to advertise the whole world, we're trying to be true to ourselves. And so certainly not by ad spending. We haven't done it that way. We've done it other ways. Farm tours. We put on farm tours and we bring thousands of consumers to our farms. That's a very valuable thing, but a lot of that is very intensive management to pull off versus buying ads and that kind of thing. So we've done more of a hands-on marketing build. Of course, now we're getting big enough now, of course, so things are changing, but our foundation's always been doing the right thing and having faith that we'll get credit for doing the right thing. And I think overall we have. But again, I wish they recognized the co-op side. I think we are recognized for being a high-integrity company, high-quality products, and that kind of thing. But I'd like to be recognized for an alternative ownership model as well.
Yeah, one of the other things that we've been dealing with a lot in the B Corp community is this idea of, traditionally, if you've been a business that's been operating under social and environmental high ethical value, you've kind of had this, we've often had the belief that just doing the work is building the next economy and sort of business, like we're proving that this model works. And at the same time, it's a big conversation within B Corps is with the new political realities, what's the role of business in not just building what's new, but also opposing or sort of being more activist in the sort of political arena? How do you balance that, or how do you think about that sort of tension in Organic Valley?
Well, first off, organics has been very blessed in Washington, D.C., but organics is the most positive, proactive, self-generative business you can imagine. The amount of money they spend to support organic industry is pitiful compared to the growth. And so here you have a self-governed, self-generated marketplace that's saving family farms and satisfying consumers. You couldn't find a more, whatever you want to call it, business-generated idea. There's no government subsidies that made our business happen. It's been just us working hard. And so we've always had recognition, and I always like to joke that if you want to get down to the red state, blue state phenomena, our red states are where the farmers are growing the food, and the blue states are where our consumers are buying the products. And we pretty well got the bases covered. And we've been very blessed overall in that world. But having gone past that, the organics, it's hard for us to be involved with a lot of the political issues because we just have our hands full, and we have plenty of Republicans and plenty of Democrats, and we have to be at some point cautious how much we get into politics that aren't directly related to our marketplace, because that's our role as the marketplace and serving our members and missions. So we kind of stay close to the organic discussion is what we do, but we've always been very politically active on our front door. We're the ones that are at the meetings. We're the ones that volunteer to be on committees and that kind of thing. But that's, again, leadership for organics. And, of course, that also protects our own marketplace by being there. Being the large player in the organic farm community, we always have felt we have a duty to all the organic farmers who don't have the same kind of representation we have. So we don't just serve our co-op. We're serving the organic movement.
How are you thinking about climate change in your daily operations? And then how do you think about it in more longer-term strategic planning?
Well, I like your premise for your program. The things that we call new economy or sustainability are by and large just good business. And so, we've done quite a bit along that. We have two supply chains of sorts. We have the ones we can control, which is relatively the farmers and the establishments or the buildings we have and our actions. And then we have all these 100 co-pack plants. But the supply chain we control, we definitely have a sustainability department. We're definitely measuring all the different things. We've invested 2 big wind turbines at our facility that produce a huge amount of our electricity. And we, of course, are promoting organic agriculture, which is in itself a big climate change factor. I recently heard that if we just raise the organic matter of the earth of farm soils to 0.3 up, which is not much, you would take care of all the sequestration that was needed for a year, every year. So, organic matter is a big deal. It's a big deal for a lot of reasons. But so by promoting organics, we're doing a lot right there. We've also done a lot of research on the benefits of pasturing animals versus confining them. And we're doing all we can to advocate for maximizing pasture in our animal production. And we're also finding a lot out about the methane gases and all those kind of things. So the first thing is to just know the facts. And mostly everything that's needed for the climate change or sustainability really serves the farmer well. And I've not found much that doesn't go hand in hand in a good, positive way.
And what are you, on maybe a personal or professional level, what are you most excited about right now?
Well, I'm now got a 5-year notice period for myself before I retire. And so I really enjoyed kind of circling back to foundations. And, we've written down all our foundation principles. We've written the lessons learned, restructuring things. So I'm going through a lot of governance, rebuilding, getting away from dependency on a heroic employee type thing. And so how do you have a business that stays smart, dynamic, flexible, and capable and still be big? That's a pretty big, challenging question, and I'm enjoying that question quite a bit now.
Yeah, so give us some of your early findings. What are some of the principles you've come back to?
Oh, well, of course, there's strategic planning. That's a good one. We've done a lot of shooting from the hip. So, you get 900 employees, you need to have a story, a master plan. So that's one. Of course, the attack of data is the second one. So, data is easy to come by. In fact, you can have way too many people doing data and not near enough of what I call management information. So how do you take your data and make it truly give you guidance for here forward instead of being a backward look? So management information is a second one. A third one is just more analytics, like analytics in departments. Everybody having an analyst that helps them stay on budget and just be smarter instead of being the accounting department coming down. How do we get that so it's more ownership for accountability amongst all the departments and sub-departments a question. And research is something that I'm really into now because I'm finding that I'm doing business with 10 and $30 billion companies now, and I'm finding that they do a lot more research than I realized, because when you run a big boat, you better know where you want to be in 5 years, because the big boat doesn't turn that easy. So that means you better be doing a lot of long-term thinking and figuring where you're going and that kind of thing. And then equally importantly is the role of intuition, and how do we not overwhelm ourselves with straight line thinking, and how do we keep our gut engaged and all that kind of thing. And, a good idea is a good idea unless it's done at the wrong time. And then it's a bad idea. So timing, intuition, how do you bring that into experience, all those things into what can often turn into a straight line exercise without some circularness or whatever you want to call the softer or intuitive side.
Yeah, I remember a study, maybe it's a little bit depressing, but it said 60% of businesses succeed because of timing, not necessarily because they're a brilliant company.
Right. No, timing's a big deal. So I'm working on those concepts I just said I'm working on those in my next 5 years. What do I do to make the company, more dynamic and flexible? I think we're pretty dynamic and flexible now, but the point is how do we build that into our DNA so it's not dependent on who the CEO is?
And my sort of cheesy consulting question is, what do you think Organic Valley, what are the top 2 to 3 challenges that keep you up at night?
Well, no matter how well things are going or not going in our business, we live and die by supply demand, having the right amount of milk at the right time and the right amount of eggs. And we're trying to return money to the farmers. We're trying to not short customers. So you're always stuck with basically forecasting, which is a glorified word for guessing how much supply you need in 15 months. And you make a decision, and 15 months comes, and all of a sudden you're oversupplied or undersupplied. They're both equally painful. And so it doesn't matter if we're going good or not good, behind the scene is where you're at with your supply-demand balance. And so if we're trying to keep the pay price up, then we need to be really as good as possible on that. But if you don't have enough product, then you short, and your customers are all mad at you. So no matter what year it is, what time of year, that supply-demand is always the big thing behind us. The equal side of that is trying to give farmers a sustainable pay price. And then the other challenge is, of course, everybody else out there is trying to make that same forecast. And so literally right now we're oversupplied of milk. It's very challenging and threatening. And yet 2 years ago we were undersupplied of milk. So it's constantly a battle. And we just don't want it to get so bad that it endangers us, but more importantly, endangers our goal of making farmer pay price be somewhat stable and definitely sustainable. Because if you don't do that, then when the market surges again, then you won't have farmers joining in. We're always balancing that supply, demand, and sustainable, stable pay price goal. After that, we don't worry too much about all the competitive forces. We always get irritated when there's natural or non-GMO products selling to look like organics. But in general, those things, just really actually building the awareness of the consumer. And we've seen over and over again that they keep coming into organics in the long run. Just no matter how long they take till they start asking questions before they support organics.
That is a very optimistic response to the increase in sort of like false. I really appreciate that sort of idea of, maybe it's not everything that, these companies do isn't horrible as long as it raises consumer awareness of actual organics.
Well, listen, we started a business trying to answer that there's 27 items in that product that you can't even pronounce. And guess what? Now there's only 7 items in there and you can pronounce all of them. That's a pretty big influence we've all had. And if that's all you're interested in, that takes away some motivation to buy an organic product. But by the time they get to that level, they've already asked enough questions to realize, there's a lot of issues here, and organics is a safe haven. But it's certainly irritating when you see people thinking that non-GMO labeled products is better than organic. When the truth is that's the same food that we rebelled against in the mid-'80s. They're now saying it's better than organics, and it makes no sense at all, especially with the increased chemical use that you're seeing now in the farm communities.
What is your absolute most favorite thing to do in the world?
Oh, boy. Well, that's a little unfair. I'm a naturalist, and my favorite thing is being in nature, but that's just who I've always been. I was a Boy Scout, a bird watcher when I was a kid, so I've always been a naturalist. Otherwise, I love keeping the faith and, having faith that if you do the right thing, it'll come back around. And Organic Valley's thrown a lot of karmic chips out there, and they've all come back home sooner or later. I've seen it in living color, and it's kind of neat to have that faith that doing good does come back around.
I love that you're also, or you sound like you were a bird watcher. I dabbled in it for a while. And then once I got my own bird, I suddenly was like less interested in birds outside because I had a bird inside. It was kind of funny.
Well, the interesting thing about things like bird watching is the art of being a CEO is having a whole comprehensive 360 view of things. You've got to not just tunnel into your own view. You've got to keep your eyes open and looking around and noticing things. And honestly, bird watching is a great training. And I think they should require bird watching for all people because it teaches you peripheral vision and not looking down at the ground. So to me, bird watching is a real good training.
I love it.
Also farm with horses. That's a dandy. Teach you about energy and, keeping your eyes open. And I did that for many years. So I always give that a lot of credit too, which I know are very strange CEO training moments, but that's who I am.
I love this idea of, the Harvard MBA includes bird watching and farming with horses. we could start a movement.
Yeah.
What is the book you most often give as a gift?
Oh, boy. I don't know that I could answer that. I definitely am a philosopher of organics is the philosophy. We've cornered it into a label. But organics means the integrated parts making a whole. And it was actually a school of philosophy in Greek times. And it's a way of thinking. It's a way of being. So anything to do with that comes close to that kind of a philosophical subject is something I've done. I can't really think of a book. I love Wendell Berry. I love his whole perspective. I certainly give one of those books. I love Black Elk Speaks. That's a great book.
That's a great book.
Teaches it. If I had a couple of favorite books, they would go between country wisdom and native wisdom.
Yeah, Black Elk Speaks.
And by the way, a very interesting thing about our co-op now that is also something we don't brag about, but it's a phenomenal thing now, is that 45% of our membership are plain folks, the Amish, Mennonite, Anabaptist people, 45% of our members. And it's really added to our deep commitment to the community because they're very long-lasting, they're very community-oriented, they're very fair-oriented. So for us, I'm a lead in that kind of thinking, but here these Amish come along and join us, and they're very much that way about the good of the community and holistic thinking. And so it's really been a blessing for us to have those people see us as trustworthy and join us, and the Amish are seeing organics as a lifeline for their farms. And so that's been real exciting connection we've had. We've actually got quite inside the Amish communities and their banking and a lot of different things, the bishops and all those things that we've been exposed to in many, many states.
It's funny, in Sarah Van Gelder's interview recently, I asked her what she found in resilient communities, and she mentioned heavy Amish populations.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an interesting trend.
Well, they are becoming the new laborers. We're very immigrant-oriented laborers, but meanwhile, the Amish are seeing, instead of having mega chicken houses on 20 acres, we're now having, 20 houses on 20 different Amish farms because they have built-in labor. You don't have the disease, the manure runoff all concentrated. You've got a fragmented system versus a concentrated, and that's a good movement. Even though I may not like some of the chicken houses, but it's still good to have them spread out and have the family labor doing it versus all hired labor.
Who else are you watching in this next economy space? Is there anyone in particular or a few folks that inspire you?
Well, there's lots of people doing a lot of good work, and it's hard to know about them. But, our good friends are always Patagonia and Cliff Bar type people who have gone through their own changes, usually thought about selling out or not, and they realized that was not their path, and they wanted just to keep doing good and have faith that was the right path. And so, I've watched a whole lot of good businesses get bought and sold and lose a lot of their roots. And they may still produce good food. They still may have a nice brand name, but they've lost a lot of the heart and soul of being a movement-driven business. And so, it's going to be lonely, as a matter of fact. Here we are. And so, but that's who we are, and that's our farmers want us to be that, and it's very positive.
And what do you need right now? One of the things we like to ask is for the listeners to help you in any initiatives. I'm curious if there's any events or movements or anything folks can do to help join and support your work at Organic Valley.
Well, the first obvious one is to buy organic products and to build on the value system of organic. So there's certified organic, and then there's family farm organic, then there's co-op business structure organic, then there's local. There's all kinds of values, and the only hope is for consumer driven reaction, and that's what we thought when we started, and we were right. Consumers were willing to pay more if they really thought that they were doing good from the ground up, including doing good for their own health. So consumers just need to lead now. We started our co-op because we could see politics wasn't going to take us anywhere. Well, here we are 30 years later, and we couldn't be more frustrated about politics taking us to a sustainable future. We need to do that on our own. The people need to do that. So our self-action is really important. After that, if I was selling preferred stock today, I'd tell them to go on our web and consider buying some preferred stock because we are going to open it up soon. No, I'm really into the people solving their own problems. I guess that's what I said at first there. It's easy to say business is bad, but business is just a vehicle. It can be good or bad. And we've found business to be very good.
And where can folks go? What's your website, just in case, when you do announce that stock offering?
Just Organic Valley. It's a website. We do have more brands than that. Our business name is Crop Cooperative Regions of Organic Producer Pools. It's a national name. It's our legal name, but our brand name is Organic Valley. Our meat brand is Organic Prairie. We've got Mighty as a meat brand. We've got multiple brands, but we do answer the phone Organic Valley, and our primary website is Organic Valley.
Yeah, it looks like organicvalley.coop.
.coop, yeah.
Well, George,
we really like to find a way for people to understand and appreciate co-ops more. That's one of the real challenges we're trying to address now. So,
Next Economy Now is a production of Lift Economy. To listen to all of our episodes, go to lifteconomy.com/podcast. That's LIFT economy.com/podcast. You can also sign up for our monthly newsletter at lifteconomy.com/newsletter. Please also rate and review our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.